Hi, everyone, and welcome to today's product demo, Mastering Conflict Resolution with Conflict Strategies Inventory, hosted by HRDQ-U and presented by Dr. Michael Brenner. My name is Sarah, and I will moderate our product demo today. Our time will last around 1 hour. If you have any questions or comments, please type them into the questions box on your GoToWebinar control panel there. And if you could locate that questions box, type a hello where you're coming from, just get comfortable finding that because we will be using that throughout our session today. And you can also download today's handouts. You can access those under the handouts tab on your control panel there as well. And we will answer as many questions as we can during our time together today. And for any of those that are outstanding, we will follow up via email. And now I'd like to welcome our presenter today, Dr. Michael Brenner, founder and CEO of Chord Leadership. Michael collaborates with leaders and teams at all levels to strengthen essential skills needed for peak performance. He achieves this by drawing on more than 2 decades of experience as an international leadership consultant, executive coach, keynote speaker, and educator, and more than 35 years as a professional musician. Michael's unconventional workshops, executive coaching sessions, and consulting services have grounded in the belief that when people work in harmony, great things happen. And it's helped clients increase employee engagement, reduce turnover, improve customer service, and create more inclusive work environments. I'm sure you can imagine why we love having Michael here on our consulting team at HRDQ. And with that, Mike, I will pass it over to you to take it away. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for that introduction, and welcome to all of you out there in virtual land, wherever you're dialing in from. Welcome. I'm here in the Philadelphia region. We have a hot and muggy, but clear blue sky and sunny day. So wherever you are, I hope you're having a great day, and thank you so much for carving out 50 to 60 minutes of your afternoon to join Sarah and myself. You want to learn a little bit about conflict, huh? Well, I think you've come to the right place. We're going to get into this fascinating assessment, this inventory, the conflict strategies inventory momentarily. But first, I want to kind of lay some groundwork here and talking about what is the point of investing energy in trying to resolve conflict. You might think, well, conflict is bad. I would push back a little bit on that because what I've learned over 25 years of doing this kind of work is that conflict itself is neither good nor bad. It's really the way that we manage conflict that makes the difference. Now, there might be some of you out there thinking, well, I can't think of a situation where conflict would be good necessarily, but I'm going to challenge you a little bit. Think of what successful conflict resolution can potentially lead to. What can it be a means for generating? If you're able to move through conflict successfully and come out on the other side, intact, what are some of the potential positive results of that? So go ahead and just put your thoughts in the answers box.
Yes, so you can type your response into the questions pane
I'm
there.
sorry. Questions box. There is no answer box.
And we'll answer some of those, or we'll share off some of those responses that we received. And
Thank you,
let's
Sarah.
see. So we have teamwork, new innovative solutions. What else do we have here? A happier workplace and retirement, confidence, a better understanding of the situation, happier
Good.
employees, honesty. Those are some of the responses we're receiving. Resolutions, those are a couple.
Yeah, those are excellent. I do a full day workshop on conflict resolution, and one of the things I have folks do is to draw a picture using markers or crayons of what conflict feels like. And you can imagine you get all kinds of terrible imagery, tanks and bombs and people yelling and screaming. And we put these pictures up around the wall and we let people take a look at them. And the point of that exercise, folks, is if we think about conflict strictly in those types of terms, in other words, if those are the images that flood our minds when we think about conflict, well, that's certainly going to inform the way we navigate through conflict, right? If we think about conflict as just inherently bad, inherently negative, inherently to be avoided, then when it comes time to make our way through a conflict, you know, we're going to our resulting behavior is going to reflect that. So I'm not saying that we need to associate sunshine and rainbows and unicorns with conflict, but I do want us to be open to the prospect that successful conflict resolution can actually push the team, push the organization in a positive direction, just as many of you said. So the first thing that we want to think about is conflict as neither good nor bad, but if we resolve it properly or effectively, can really lead to some positive outcomes. Now, I have a few here myself. Can be more creative, right? We talk about creative tension or creative conflict. That's not people, going at it with fists and what have you. That's people, working through a problem or brainstorming together. That's a type of conflict, but it potentially fuels creativity or fuels problem solving where somebody has one perspective, somebody else has another perspective. You kind of negotiate through that conversation and you end up with a better solution than you would have had otherwise. Same with decision making, right? New ideas, brainstorming, group performance just increases when you have that trust that you can experience conflict with a colleague and know that you're both working toward the same goal of mutually satisfying resolutions, then group performance goes up. And as we'll see later, trust goes up, morale goes up, rapport goes up. So successfully resolving conflict, I think, is a hallmark of high performing teams. Okay. And that's exactly where this inventory comes in, this conflict strategies inventory. Because it's one thing to say, okay, if we navigate through conflict successfully, that's potentially good for the team, potentially good for the organization. But, what are the details? Give me the details. How do we do that? What do I need to know? What information do I need to know to allow that to happen? And that's precisely where this tool comes in. So if you are on a team that ends up taking this assessment, it'll help you do a couple of key things. First of all, it'll help you navigate through a very methodical and thoughtful process that will expose your strengths and your potential liabilities when it comes to resolving conflict successfully. In addition, it will provide insights for you that will enhance your ability to handle conflict successfully because you will learn more about which conflict style, which we'll get into in a moment, is most appropriate for the situations and circumstances that you might face at work. Okay, more about that in a moment. So the three key steps that investing in this tool will do for you is number one, you'll gain a basic understanding of the background and theory of conflict management, which is actually quite fascinating, right? So you'll get some real grounding about how our thinking about conflict has evolved over the centuries. That will lay a groundwork for you to get a better understanding of your own preferred strategy for dealing with conflict. And all of us, more or less, have a default conflict strategy that we reach for because it just feels natural for us. And so the assessment is going to help identify what your preferred style or strategy is for you. And then armed with that knowledge, you'll be able to apply it to any current situations or any future situations so that you can choose the best strategy to get you the results you need in that situation. Okay, so those are the three key steps. The bottom line here, ladies and gentlemen, is that with a keen understanding of the 5 conflict strategies, which we'll get to in a moment, as well as your own preferred style, which is what the assessment will identify for you, you'll be better equipped to navigate conflict, even if you're conflict averse, even if you're someone that doesn't like conflict at all. You'll have the knowledge to be able to deal with conflict with greater competence, confidence, and composure. And that's really what it's all about. We don't expect everybody to, be overjoyed when we're in a conflict. But the challenge is to increase our understanding of what conflict is, what causes it, and what these different strategies are so that we can be more intentional in selecting the strategy when we find ourselves in conflict. For me, doing this for as long as I've done it, I think that's a hallmark of the best leaders. It's a hallmark of the best managers. It's a hallmark of the best, associates, employees, team members, is that ability to identify the best strategy for the situation or the circumstance. Now, let's quickly take a look at some of the science behind this tool. This is not a psychology class, but I thought you might find it interesting just to get a basic understanding here, because the psychosocial research about conflict is really quite fascinating. But let's keep it simple for now. Different people, different conflict styles. I think one of the great discoveries of the 20th century when it comes to psychosocial research is that we have different styles. We have different communication styles. We have different leadership styles. We have different influence styles. And yes, we have different conflict styles. And so over the years, these instruments, these tools, these assessments have been developed to allow us to get a better understanding of what makes us tick. Why do we behave the way that we do? Okay, so different people, different styles. Now, going back to the ancient Greeks, like Plato and Aristotle, they felt that the elimination of conflict was paramount, was key. They associated order with the good life and disorder with the bad life. And that thinking about conflict was more or less unchanged until as recently as the 20th century, more specifically the 1950s. Conflict was something that we should try to eliminate from our lives. But it wasn't until social researchers, social scientists in the second half of the 20th century, so we're not talking a long time ago, had a kind of a different view of conflict. And they thought that, well, you know what? This idea that we should eliminate conflict from our lives is not pragmatic. It's not realistic. If we accept that conflict is inevitable, then let's invest in trying to explore how it can potentially be beneficial. So we sort of pivoted from conflict bad to be avoided to conflict is inevitable. So let's see how we can benefit from conflict. Kind of a radical idea if you think about it. Then there were these two social scientists, Blake and Mouton, and they're largely responsible for coming up with this concept of 5 conflict styles. Okay, and here's how they define conflict style. Again, we're going back into like the 50s. They define conflict style as the dominant cognitive behavioral strategy that one adopts when faced with impending conflict. So the key word there is strategy, right? This is what is a strategy? A strategy is a path forward in the pursuit of accomplishing a goal. Okay, so the dominant strategy someone adopted when facing a conflict. They came up with this idea that your conflict style was a reflection of two factors. One was the degree of concern for production of work. Think of that as one of the factors, versus degree of concern for people. Okay, that was the second factor. So this blending of focus on work production versus focus on the people was at the heart of their model of conflict styles. And so their 5 styles that they came up with were forcing, withdrawing, smoothing, compromising, and problem solving. And they're very well known for plotting these 5 styles on a grid. And here's a kind of a simplified version of what their grid looked like. Okay, you see concern for production is the vertical axis, concern for people is the horizontal axis, and right, you see the withdrawing, smoothing, compromising, problem solving, and forcing at various areas on the grid. Okay. Now, over the ensuing decades, this idea of 5 conflict styles has been, streamlined and perfected. And so now we use similar but slightly different language to describe those 5 conflict styles, right? Integrating, compromising, competing, smoothing, and avoiding. So these are the 5 styles we use today that sort of grew out of that previous model. And these are the 5 styles that the conflict inventory examines. So let's take a quick look at 3 aspects of conflict and why it's important to be familiar with them. And then we'll return to those 5 conflict styles. So think about one dimension of conflict has to do with relationships. That is the nature of, well, the nature of our relationship, right? The manner in which we interact with one another and the way we think about each other. So a negative outcome from unmanaged or excessive conflict could be, at least when it comes to the relationship dimension, could be distrust and suspicion, resistance to teamwork, and of course, employee attrition when, if it gets bad enough, people are going to look for the exit. The second dimension is task. So we have relationship dimension, and now we have the task dimension. The task dimension has to do with what is being done, right? So should we pursue this market or that market? Or should we produce this kind of report or that kind of report? So conflict around task, okay? You've all seen this movie before, that when there are conflicts around the task dimension, progress gets delayed, we get more stressed out, decision making is compromised, right? This is back and forth. What should we do? When should we do it? Okay. So we have relationship, task, and that third dimension is process. So if the task dimension is what should we do, the process dimension is how should we do it? Okay. And you've all seen conflicts around process as well, leading to inefficient timelines. Which team should supervise that piece of the work? Well, that's not really, our responsibility. That should be your responsibility. And back and forth it goes, right? So inefficient timelines, resources get taxed as departments or teams start hoarding resources. People get frustrated, right? Misunderstood frustration. Yeah, I mean, Bob seems really frustrated, but I'm not really sure why, right? So communication breaks down, trust breaks down, collaboration breaks down, poor performance, lack of trust, lack of morale, and teams start to splinter. All right, so that is not what we want. Okay, what we want instead is a positive outcome that is the result of effectively managed conflict. Right. Let's take a look at that relationship dimension. We manage conflict effectively. We actually build trust and foster open dialogue, leading to stronger teamwork and productivity. Similarly, with that task dimension, we might come up with new approaches of getting the work done, things we hadn't considered before, right? People are working more collaboratively, more cooperatively, stress is reduced, decision making is quicker and more efficient. And finally, that third dimension, the process dimension, right? Once those process conflicts get kind of worked through, people just feel better about their jobs, right? There's less nonsense to have to deal with, less bureaucracy, less red tape, engagement goes up, efficiency goes up, frustration goes down. And so the result of all that is improved performance, higher levels of trust, higher morale, and as opposed to the team splintering, now the team is collaborating and united. So, pretty stark differences between whether you're able to manage conflict successfully or unsuccessfully. Okay, so I just wanted to share those 3 dimensions with you: relationship, task, and process, because inevitably, virtually every conflict is the result of one or more of those dimensions. Okay, so here's what happens when we are in conflict and where we sort of have a choice of managing that conflict well or managing it poorly. This is a very simple diagram of what happens when we're in conflict, but I think it's I think it's informative. So let's take a look at A and B here, right? Non-compatible goals. That's the definition of being in conflict. You and the other party just have incompatible goals or incompatible perspectives or incompatible points of view, okay? And you try to work your way through that conflict and you come out on the other side with either both parties' goals met, both parties' goals unmet, or one party's goal met and the other party's goals unmet, right? So some combination of that. Now, more specifically, let's look at those 5 strategies that I talked about earlier and see how they might play out in a real life conflict scenario. Okay. The first one is integrating. Take a look at the graphic here. You have A and B in that initial space of conflict, but they're working through that conflict using an integrating strategy such that they refocus their efforts on discovering one mutually satisfying outcome. Here's an example I think we can all identify with. Let's say you and your partner are hungry and want to go to dinner. So that's the goal that each of you has, satiating your hunger. Partner A says, I want to go for Italian food. Partner B says, I don't like Italian food. How about Chinese food? Partner A says, I don't like Chinese food. So you see what's going on here, right? The preference of one party is disliked by the preference of the other party. So after a minute or two, they step back and think about, well, is there a cuisine that we both enjoy? Indian food. Let's go to Indian food, okay? So this is an example of 2 competing or conflicting perspectives leading to the integration of those perspectives and resulting in a resolution that works for both. Now, compromising is a little different. Compromising would sound like this. How about, partner A says, how about we go for Italian food tonight, because that's what I want. And next time we go out to eat, we'll go to Chinese food because that's what you want. Now, that's a resolution that can move the 2 parties beyond the impasse, but neither one is really getting what they want, right? Because partner B is going to have to eat Italian food tonight, and partner A is going to have to eat Chinese food next time, right? But it's good enough to get them to the restaurant. So that's what we call compromising. Okay, they've moved toward each other's goal, but neither party is getting 100% of what they want. So that's compromising. Competing is pretty easy to understand. That's when partner A says, well, I'm in the mood for Italian, and that's it. We're going to Italian food, take it or leave it. Okay, so one of the partner's goals are met, but the other partner's goals are not satisfied. The other side of that coin is smoothing. So partner B might say, well, it's true, I don't really like Italian food, but I know you like it, dear. So that's fine. We'll go for Italian food. Okay. Smoothing. One of the parties puts aside their goals so that the other partner's goals can be achieved. We have integrating, compromising, competing, smoothing, and that final strategy is avoiding. That's where partner A says, I don't know why you have to be so difficult all the time. It's just dinner. And you know what? Forget you. I'm going to go out and grab a burger with the guys. Okay. So avoiding. One of the partners has removed themselves from the situation and has, fled the scene, so to speak. These are the 5 classic conflict strategies that this tool examines. And when you take this tool, this assessment, you will learn which of these 5 styles is your default. Okay. And one of the hallmarks of the most effective team members, they understand which type of conflict the parties are facing. Is it a relationship conflict? Is it a task conflict? Or is it a process conflict? They'll understand which solution is most appropriate for the conflict situation and what results would likely be produced by implementing that solution. And then finally, which of the 5 conflict strategies is represented by that solution. Okay. So you see, this is a much more thoughtful and intentional approach to resolving conflict than just relying on your impulse or on your, just your reaction. And that's unfortunately how a lot of us respond to conflict. We just go to that place that we've gone to. It's become a habit. And what we don't necessarily realize is that we have a choice. Now, it's not always easy to get out of that comfort zone and choose another path, choose another strategy. But that's exactly what this instrument allows you to do. It allows you to be more thoughtful, purposeful, and intentional when you find yourself in a conflict with regards to how to resolve it. Okay. So while some people, the research has found, possess a combination of conflict styles, as I've sort of intimated today, most people do have a dominant style. It's the one they feel most comfortable using. It's the one that they just habitually reach for, regardless of the situation or circumstance they find themselves in. Sometimes that dominant style works out just great. Sometimes it doesn't. Okay. It's important to keep in mind, folks, that no conflict style is better or worse than another. I want to dismiss that idea that, one of these is better. That's not how this works. This next sentence is critical because the key is recognizing which style is likely to yield the best resolution in that specific context or situation, given the knowledge that you'll have about your own primary or dominant style. Okay. So I think you should have a pretty good understanding now of where a tool like this came from. It came from centuries or maybe even, millennia of really smart people writing and thinking and discussing the nature of conflict. And we've landed on these 5 classic strategies, and I've shared with you what they look and sound like using, kind of a common real life example. So how does the tool actually work? Well, I'll show you briefly. Okay. When you take the assessment, you'll be um, you'll be exposed to 10 situations that reflect different types of conflict. Okay. And what you'll be asked to do is take a look at 5 possible responses. So 10 situations, each of which has 5 possible responses. And you're going to rank 3 of those 5 responses that you would most likely use in that situation. For the response that is your number 1 response, you would place the number 5. For the response that would be your second choice, you would place the number 2. And for the response that is your third choice, you would place the number 1. Okay. It takes roughly 25 minutes to read the 10 conflict situations and think through your number 1 answer, your number 2 answer, and your number 3 answer. So really not a lot of time. Here's a sample from the assessment, right? Now we don't have the situation here, but it's okay because we're just using this as an example. Whatever the scenario or situation that was presented, you looked at C. Go to Eric's supervisor and file a complaint that Eric's short-sightedness is getting in the way of a valuable initiative, right? That's your number 1 answer, so that gets the 5. A is your second answer, right? Request a transfer to another department where you might have a more supportive manager, so you put a 2 there. D is your third favorite response, so it gets the number 1, okay? That's approaching Eric and proposing that your department implements several of the less expensive ideas. And on it goes for those 10 total situations presented in the assessment. Now, at the end of this, you will get a scoring form. If you do this online, you'll get it scored automatically. If you do it print, then you'll have to score it manually, but it's not difficult. Let's take a quick look at the scoring sheet here. And notice there are 10 items here, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, representing those 10 scenarios or hypotheticals. Under each of those, you have those 5 responses, A, B, C, D, or E. And what you would do is, again, if the computer will do this automatically if you do it online, but if you do the print version, you will carry over your scoring onto this scoring form. So let's look at number 1 for a moment. For scenario number 1, you gave C, you gave that the 5 because that was your number 1 answer. You gave A 2 because that was your second favorite answer. And you gave D, your third favorite answer, the 1. And that's how it goes. 5, 2, and 1. 5, 2, and 1. 5, 2, and 1 for all of these. Then you add up the number of A's, the number of B's, the number of C's, and you calculate that and you put those scores in the bottom right, the boxes at the bottom right. And that will tell you what your dominant strategy is. So for this individual, they scored themselves a 27 on integrating, a 31 on compromising, a 10 on competing, a 3 on smoothing, and a 4 on avoiding. So one can conclude that their primary dominant conflict style, their default, their comfort zone is compromising because that had the highest score at 31. Where they feel most uncomfortable is smoothing because that got the lowest score of number 3. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense. It's very simple and I'm probably complicating it. All you do is move your scores over, you add it all up, and you put your scores in those boxes. And now you have a fairly good idea of how these 5 styles sort of play out in your personality, in your temperament. Okay. Now, armed with that information, that's great. What do you do with it? Well, I think the richness of the learning experience comes not only from getting a better understanding of the science behind this idea, not only knowing what your style is, but also having that conversation with your peers about what are the implications of this information now. And when I've done this for intact work teams, it's incredibly enlightening because you now realize that your peer or your colleague has a very different conflict strategy than you, which may have led to some issues in the past, but now you can talk about it. What does that mean for you? What does that mean for your team? What does that mean for, the 2 or 3 colleagues that you work closest with? And so when we suggest, 3-hour and 45-minute session around, this tool, we really want you to invest, at least that much time because it's the ensuing conversation that really unleashes the learning. Okay. Now you can cut. Now, if it's 3.5 hours, or the exact time to the minute is not what matters. What matters is having that rich dialogue with your colleagues so that you can really take a deep dive on the scores and what the implications are for the team moving forward. Now, if you complete the assessment in advance, it will obviously reduce that workshop time by approximately 45 minutes, right? So I had said a moment ago, it takes on average 25 minutes to complete, but we've also seen folks that take as much as, 40, 45 minutes. So think of that as the window. If you're able to complete the assessment beforehand, you'll shave off, 30 to 45 minutes. So just something to keep in mind. So once again, I want to underscore the value of a tool like this because with increased awareness of your conflict style and a practical framework to build upon, which you'll get from all the different resources that sort of are available to you. If you're an aspiring leader, it's particularly valuable. But I would say even if you're not in a position of leadership, it's equally valuable because knowing the preferred style of folks on your team, honing your ability to assess and adjust your actions accordingly, and improving your ability to win hearts and minds in any situation is certainly a hallmark of effective leadership. But I also think beyond just leading, it's also a hallmark of just being an effective team member, which is why I say whether you're in a formal position of leadership at your organization, I still maintain very strongly that a tool like this is extremely valuable, because while it's undoubtedly important for leaders, I think it's also very important for anybody on a team that hopes to work in a collaborative, harmonious, cooperative way. So there's no downside to this knowledge. There's only upside, regardless of what your role or position might be in the organization. Okay. So if I have intrigued you, and I hope I have, with this very brief overview of this instrument, and you're inclined to, want to check it out, here's what's available to you. So the facilitator guide is one of the most important pieces of collateral. It includes everything that you might need if you are somebody that might do the training yourself. Everything you might need to deliver the inventory workshop, including, and I'll get to these in a moment, the HRDQ card, poster, workbook, and of course the assessment itself. Now, what is an HRDQ card? It's a really handy little memory device. On the front, you have those 5 conflict strategies that I just summarized for you. And on the back, you have that graphic of those 2 parties, A and B, sort of, making their way through the conflict. So you've seen this before in this presentation, but now you're going to have it, in your desk drawer or up on your cube or at home if you're working from home. It's a very nice, handy little reference for what is essentially, the foundational principles of this program. You'll also get this really cool poster. Once again, just another visual aid for our understanding of the 5 conflict strategies. The workbook, it's a beautiful workbook, and it contains a wealth of information that participants will work through when they are attending the workshop. So everything that a participant might need is in the workbook. And there's a sample page of what it looks like. So it's very professionally printed. It's aesthetically quite pleasing. The assessment itself, as I mentioned, can come either online, which is on the right, or the paper version on the left. So whatever makes sense for you and your team, you have those 2 options. Something else that we provide for our clients is called the Quick Start Train the Trainer. And that is a 1-hour prep session for our clients who want to learn how to deliver this program. So myself or another, of my colleagues will literally get on the computer with you and walk you through the steps that it takes to get very familiar and comfortable with this content. So think of me as a coach. I'll coach you through the basics so that you can increase your comfort level when it comes to you presenting this information. So think of it as a one-on-one coaching session with skill practice. It's delivered virtually. You get that one-on-one attention. You can ask questions. You can ask for clarification. And we've had a lot of clients take advantage of these Quick Start Train the Trainer sessions and let us, tell us later that they were very, very valuable. So that's available if you or someone on your team wants to actually be the facilitator. I mentioned the facilitator guide a moment ago. Other support materials that are available to you include more about the theory background, learning overview, role cards and skit cards, which have different scenarios and situations on them that you can practice. And I think that's so important to the learning process, is not just getting the theory and not just getting the knowledge, but also having the opportunity to practice the skills. You get the PowerPoint deck, you get the sample online assessment report, and the certificate of achievement and the program evaluation. So it's a nice package for those of you who are inclined to think about moving in that direction. So here's what the theory background looks like. Here's what the learning overview looks like. Just giving you a very quick notion of what these supplementary materials look like. Here's a role card, for example. You can see here your role. You're the vice president of merchandising for the home store retail chain featuring various home furnishings. It lays out the scenario, and it challenges you to use your knowledge accordingly and work your way through a situation. We have the skit cards, which are similar to the role cards, just with a couple of differences. Here's that PowerPoint I mentioned. You get that, all professionally done, looks great. The sample online assessment report that you can use as a reference for the program. There's that certificate of achievement, which you can distribute to folks that go through it, and ultimately the program evaluation to let us know, what you thought about your experience. So what should you do now if this sounds like something that you want to experience for yourself? Hey, try us out, okay? So you can test drive this assessment for free. You can order this product, take it for a test drive. What do you like about it? Try before you buy, kind of thing. And we try to deliver that opportunity for our clients because we don't necessarily expect you to purchase it outright. It's certainly fine if you do, but we want to give you the opportunity to really get a sense for what it's all about. And that's why we make this available to you. You can try the product with an individual, take it yourself. Or if you're inclined to do it with your team, you can do it with a team, okay? If 30 days, if you don't like it, don't care for it, give you your, no questions asked. As long as the materials are returned in a state that we could potentially use them for another client, no harm, no foul, right? No obligation, as they say on TV, right? I mentioned the Quick Start Train the Trainer. Look into that if that's something that you want to check out. And as a participant in today's webinar, my understanding is you'll be getting an email that will have more explicit instructions if you, in fact, want to either purchase this tool or test drive it. So in conclusion, ladies and gentlemen, remember that conflict is present in all aspects of our lives. There's a saying that conflict is inevitable, but combat is optional. And I learned that when I was first getting into this line of work years ago. Conflict is inevitable, combat is optional. Yes, we are going to find ourselves occasionally in conflict, but that sort of stressful, butting heads, that's a choice we make. And now, armed with this information that's present in this inventory, you don't necessarily have to go there because you'll have the knowledge to be able to navigate through any conflict scenario, whether you're a leader or not, in a much more thoughtful and intentional way, right? So remember, conflict is neither good nor bad. It's how we manage it. And this is a perfect tool for helping you do that well. Knowing your conflict style is a critical step to improving your effectiveness in the workplace, just as you might want to learn what your communication style is or your influence style. The more we learn about ourselves, our tendencies, our preferences, our habitual behaviors, I believe the more effective we can be at work and, in our personal lives too. You can reap countless rewards if you learn to handle conflict constructively, right? So real quick, back in the day, I was a smoother. That was definitely my number one strategy, smoothing. I would constantly acquiesce. I would constantly give in. And while I still do that on occasion, I've learned to become more comfortable with compromise. I've learned to be more comfortable sometimes pushing back if it's something I truly believe in, not in a nasty way, but like pushing back in a confident way, pushing back a little bit where I stand my ground in a tactful, diplomatic way. So that's a muscle that used to be kind of weak for me. But over the years, it's that'll never be as strong as my smoothing muscle, but it's bigger than it used to be. And so when I find myself in conflict now, I think about these 5 strategies. I think about my personal default style, and I think about which of the 5 styles is going to give me the best chance of a mutually agreeable resolution. And that's ultimately what it's all about. So if you have questions, you can reach out to our website if you want to learn more, hrdqstore.com. You can email us at support@hrdq.com. Or if you like picking up the phone and talking to somebody, you can call 800-633-4533. I want to thank all of you. I can't see you and I can't hear you, but I know you're out there. But truly, the fact that you have carved out some time this afternoon to learn about this, I think is commendable. I think it's a testament to your desire to be the best leader you can be the best team member you can be the best manager you can be. And I think that is, I really think that's admirable and commendable, because take it from me, not everybody, wants to learn more about themselves. But I always admire those who do, because they understand that the more we understand ourselves, the more we understand others, the more harmonious workplace we can create for everybody. And I think that's essentially what we all want. We want a satisfying, fulfilling work experience, and this is one of the ways to get there, the conflict strategies inventory. I'm going to turn it back over to my colleague Sarah for some final words. But again, thank you so much for your time, and let us know if you have any questions.
And Mike, before we wrap up today, can you clarify? Julie would like to know, can anyone use the conflict strategies inventory, or is it designed for specific roles or industries?
That's a great question. So it is not designed for for a specific role or industry. So to answer that question, literally anybody can use it, whether you're in a position of leadership or not. It will heighten your understanding of your conflict strategy, your default conflict strategy. It'll enable you to practice moving through different scenarios, and getting more comfortable with using different strategies. And I think that's just universal. That's not reflective of any specific role or industry or type of business.
Great. And then we had a question about the free test drive as well. Yes, we will follow up via email with how you can access that, so you can take a free test drive of the assessment there. So make sure that you check your inbox, and we'll give you a follow-up instruction on that. And with that, that will bring us here to the end of our session today. If you do have any additional questions, as Mike said, you can reach us there on the information on the screen. Thank you so much, Mike, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you, Sarah. And thanks for all of you for joining us today. Really appreciate it. And we hope you take advantage of this instrument. As someone that's used it for many, many years, and I've seen clients, benefit from using it. Those conversations that happen as a result of taking it are truly invaluable and can take your team to that next level of excellence. So I hope some of you will consider it.
Yes, and that here will bring us to the end of our session. Thanks again, Mike, and thank you all for participating in today's product demo. Happy training, everyone.